My next question is about when and why we will use OpenMP, TBB, Cilk. Okay, CT I understand it's only for data, but for example, about TBB, even the new version, and Cilk, if I have a new developer, which choice I must make, it's not very clear for me.
Yeah, so I tend to, there are a lot of programming models coming out, and as I said before, some of them are very general, some are more specific. I tend to group them in three categories. There's sort of a message coordination, it could be agents or message passing. There's task parallelism, there's data parallelism. And I tend to want to pick one from each at most. So yeah, using CT with TBB, no problem. That's easy because that's data parallelism, task parallelism. But you ask the critical question, which is, well, what about TBB and Cilk? They're both going after this general purpose task parallelism. So the first thing we decided is that they need to work together, because sometimes there may be an argument to use both of them. TBB's a little more general, Cilk's a little more specific, but they're both task parallel. For someone new, I think one of the first questions I'd ask is it important, which platforms is it important on? Because you know, this year we're going to have the Intel compiler support Cilk. That means you can run it on Linux and Windows, you can run it using C++, and that's it. Intel compiler only. I hope we'll evolve that over time. I hope to see other compilers support us get more platforms. That will take time. So if today you say, gee, I need this to work with more compilers and I need it, then the answer is clear. You use TBB.
Okay.
It gets fuzzier if you're new and you're willing to go just with the Intel compiler, Windows, Linux is fine with you. Then you've got a different problem, which is, you know, do you want some of the advantages Cilk will have by being a little bit simpler, or are you willing to tackle TBB? I need to work on the messaging here a bit. I mean, it's complex. The easiest way I think about it is if you already have a serial program and you want to make the absolute minimum changes to it, you want to approach it simply. Cilk's going to be a great way to go, because you take a for statement, you change it to a Cilk for for the right for loops. You take a function call and change it into a Cilk spawn function call.
Yeah.
You take some global variables that are causing too much interference and you use a hyperobject to take that global variable and say, I want it to be a hyperobject. You make very specific changes and you can look through your code and it looks almost identical to what it did before you changed it. Okay. It's very interesting, it's a very exciting thing. Now, I make it sound great, the compiler helps out and gets you good efficiency, but if you come back to me and say, well, I'm willing to restructure my code, I'm willing to change my algorithm, and I want to use a scan operation or something, then you've stepped out of that realm of wanting to do a very simple approach, and then TBB may be more to your liking.
Okay.
Now, I can tell you, I think C programmers will enjoy Cilk more than TBB. TBB uses template libraries.
Yes, C++.
I don't think it's so hard. It's C++ all the way through, and C programmers continue to tell us, hey, you know, I'm a little nervous about using it in a C program, and I understand that. Cilk will look great to C programmers.
I see. So after this explanation, OpenMP and Cilk is quite similar, because OpenMP is very easy to put a prima just before my for loop,
right.
And Cilk is quite similar. So
Open, yeah, absolutely. And if you're doing a scientific application with a lot of loops, OpenMP is going to look very good. I would never try to convince somebody that's using OpenMP to switch to Cilk if OpenMP is doing the job. I think Cilk's going to look a little simpler to non-scientific programmers. OpenMP is very rich, has a lot of complexity. If I try to teach you everything that OpenMP can do, it'll take at least a day, and even then it'll be a little bewildering. Cilk's easier to learn than that, simpler. But for a C programmer, both are a good option. OpenMP usually is thought of as very loop specific.
Yeah.
So code that's doing a lot of work in loops, OpenMP is going to make a lot of sense for. Now, OpenMP 3.0 has support for tasking.
You can do anything.
You can do anything. I think Cilk's easier to understand its model. It's not as complex and as complicated. And I think keeping the complexity down, we hope will let the compiler help with deadlocks and race conditions, detecting them, the potential for them more quickly, debugging them more quickly than what we can do with OpenMP as well.
Okay.
So, may the best model win. The choice is good.
Yeah, it depends of the guys. He's a C programmer, maybe he prefers Cilk. If I do Fortran and C, maybe I prefer OpenMP because I share some pattern. Or
yes.
Okay, I understand.